Hi, I'm Travis. I used to be a career diplomat with the Foreign Ministry of the United States, what we call the US State Department. And when I worked for the State Department, I spent the majority of my career abroad as a consular officer, or what's more commonly referred to as a visa officer. And as a visa officer, I interviewed tens of thousands of visa applicants from all over the world seeking virtually every kind of visa. Since retiring from the State Department, from the Foreign Service, I returned to the practice of law, and I'm now a U.S. immigration attorney. I focus on helping applicants navigate through the complex application and visa interview processes. And my goal here is to try to give you some insights into how the process works so you can put your best foot forward for success. Today I want to talk about 5 things that visa officers look for, or maybe that they consider, before they start the visa interview. Now, I'm going to put a link to a couple of videos in the description below, and the first one will be whether officers decide a case, decide whether to approve or deny an application before they even begin the interview. Spoiler alert, they do not. They have to consider so many factors that it's virtually impossible to reach a decision before they start talking to you. However, they will consider some very important details before they start your interview, and these details can, quite frankly, alter how the interview might proceed, and if there are some serious issues they uncover, it could lead to a denial. But let me be very clear, it's not automatic. Now, the other thing that you will notice as I go through these 5 considerations is that it is very important to be honest. We always like to tell our clients that the visa application and interview process is really an exercise in trust. Visa officers are essentially paid to be skeptical. They're not law enforcement personnel. They're not lawyers. I was actually an exception to that rule, but they are extremely skeptical. The law is written in such a way that if the applicant doesn't essentially prove or establish why they are qualified for a visa, why they deserve the visa, then the officer is likely to deny the application. If you are dishonest, or even if there are any discrepancies in information you provide, whether it's in your DS-160 online application form or in your interview, the best you can hope for is really probably a denial, and you may end up complicating your situation even more. I'll put another link in the description below to an overview of what might happen if you get caught in a lie, and it's not good. So tell the truth, and I can tell you as a visa officer, I appreciated applicants that were honest, even if they had to explain a complication or maybe something that was embarrassing in their past, much more than I appreciated an applicant who maybe tried to hide something. So with that, let's go through the 5 considerations that visa officers make before they ask you the first question. Number 1, when you approach the visa window, the interview window, you will have a DS-160 confirmation sheet, and that has a little barcode on it. When you approach the window, that's the first thing your officer will probably ask you for, so they can scan that barcode with their little scanner device, and that will pull up your information on the system. Now, sometimes they operate in batches where they may have your details available on their screen before you hand them that piece of paper, but suffice to say, they will not know anything about you in almost every instance until you are physically standing in front of them. And so there could be a couple of moments of awkward silence while the officer reviews a multitude of details in their computer monitor. They may not be looking at you. They probably won't be looking at you during this time. And it's best to just let them evaluate what they have access to, as opposed to trying to start introducing yourself or your situation, because they really are thinking about a lot of things that they're looking at over here. So the first thing the officer is going to be reviewing is whether you have previously been approved or denied for a US visa application. That will be very clear on the officer's computer screen, and if you have been approved previously, it's generally a good thing. If you've been denied previously, the officer will then generally, what I would do, is immediately look at notes entered by your previous visa officer or previous officers plural, which justified the negative decisions they reached. Now, this is a little bit problematic because this may be the first thing the officer sees and it may be highly negative. So if you have been denied before, it is very important that you prepare for a different outcome at your next attempt. Remember, every time you appear in front of a US visa officer, there's essentially a record of that interaction because the officer will be typing notes to justify the decision they reach. So every visa interview is crucially important. Don't leave this process to chance. Now, the second thing your visa officer is probably going to be looking at is, do you have any pending green card applications? Do you maybe have a relative in the United States who filed an application for you to become a legal permanent resident? Have you been working for a company that maybe filed an application on your behalf to obtain a green card? Again, this is not an immediate disqualification, but it may be something that you should be prepared to explain. Remember, for most non-immigrant visas, one of the key considerations your visa officer will be wondering about is, are you likely to leave the United States after your trip or maybe your employment or your education comes to an end? Or is it more likely that you're going to stay in the United States as what's called an intending immigrant? And so if you have an application on file to be just that, an immigrant, a permanent immigrant to the United States, you will need to be very clear about why you are going to leave the country after this next trip. Now, the next thing the officer will see right in the middle of their screen is whether you have had any criminal history. Now, for anybody that's gone through the interview process before, you'll note that one of the first things you do, either when you get to the consulate or the embassy, or sometimes a few days before your interview, is you will have to be fingerprinted. You'll put your fingers and your thumbs on a little electronic scanner. And the reason that the United States does that is to run those fingerprints through criminal databases. Now, let me be very clear here. If you have had any criminal experiences, if you've ever been arrested, if you've ever had any just issues in the past, even if they might seem trivial, please consult a qualified U.S. immigration attorney to evaluate how that might affect your case. Criminal issues essentially never go away. For most criminal issues, there is nothing that we call a statute of limitations, where maybe after a certain amount of time has passed, you don't have to worry about it anymore. Similarly, if you've had charges dropped or maybe a charge expunged or any other issues like that, where for most purposes, you no longer essentially have a criminal record, this will still be apparent to your visa officer and you will still need to be highly honest and detailed about what happened. So please consult a U.S. immigration attorney and evaluate how you should proceed. One more note about criminal issues. This is not limited to issues in the United States. Many countries share criminal records with the United States and vice versa. And even if you are from, or maybe you were in a country that does not share criminal records with the United States, there are many other ways that your visa officer might still know about a criminal issue in your past. So again, it's very important that you talk to an immigration lawyer if you might fall into this category. It's not always going to be an automatic disqualification, and so it's important that you get the right advice. Now, the next thing the officer will look at, those first three things, your previous approvals or denials, whether you have a pending green card application, whether you have a criminal history, those are all immediately visible on the visa officer's computer screen. So again, there's no reason to hide any of these facts. The officer probably knows already, so be honest. The next thing the officer's probably going to do is open up your DS-160 responses. And they may not look at every single answer you provided. When I was a visa officer, I would typically look at where you were planning to go in the United States, how long you were planning to stay. I would look at maybe your work history, your travel history, And then one of the places I would always check, especially if you had been denied in the past, is first of all, whether you were honest about that denial. And then if you say you have been denied for a visa application in the past, the DS-160 will then ask you to explain. Now, this is sometimes a trap because, of course, visa officers never give you a detailed reason why they are denying your application. So you may genuinely not know why you were denied. Don't guess as to why you were denied in the answer to that question. Instead, explain again that you were denied, make it very clear you have nothing to hide, and you might also want to reiterate why you're traveling to the United States this time. Now, after the DS-160, the last thing the officer is generally going to evaluate and consider is you, the applicant. This is generally something that's done very quickly, but I would always look at the person physically standing in front of me, and this is more of a subconscious consideration, but I would think, okay, what is this person wearing? Is this person taking this seriously? Are they wearing something that they're very uncomfortable in? You know, is this a person who's telling me they're a business executive and they're wearing a suit, but they look like they've never worn a suit before? They're extremely uncomfortable and stiff. Or vice versa, is this somebody who's telling me that they're a highly successful individual, but they smell bad? They have a lot of dirt on their hands. Maybe they're wearing clothes that don't really match what they're telling me. Little cues like that can lead a visa officer to be even more skeptical, to ask even more questions. So I'll put another link in the description below to a video that we have about what you should wear to your visa interview. But in sum, wear something nice. Don't go over the top. Don't wear a lot of flashy, expensive jewelry, but also don't wear clothes that maybe have stains on them or holes in them. Make sure your hygiene is nice. And, above everything, just show the visa officer that you are taking this process seriously and you're respecting the importance of this milestone in your visa journey. So those are the 5 key things, the key considerations that your visa officer is likely making, probably just in a matter of seconds, because once you do this thousands, tens of thousands of times, it becomes almost like muscle memory. But you can rest assured that your visa officer is going through these same considerations. And as I've mentioned a couple of times, with so much information at their fingertips, assume that your visa officer already knows everything about you. Don't try to hide anything. Don't try to embellish anything. Don't say that your salary is more than it actually is. Don't say you've worked somewhere longer than you've actually worked there. Don't inflate your job title. These are all things that visa officers can quickly determine to be either truthful or not truthful. Instead, be incredibly honest throughout the process. And if you do have something that you're a little bit worried about or you need to explain, that's where I would recommend that you reach out to a qualified immigration attorney. Now, my partner Mandy and we are qualified U.S. immigration attorneys. When we retired from the Foreign Service, we dedicated our careers to helping applicants navigate through this process. We particularly focus on applicants who have specific complications, maybe a prior arrest, several previous refusals. Maybe you're stuck in an administrative processing delay. If you are in this situation, do not leave the process to chance. Reach out to us. You can either visit us at our website, www.zfvisa.com, or send us an email to info@zfvisa.com. We look forward to working with you, and best of luck in your visa journey. Follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram to stay updated with tons of valuable resources and the latest updates about different U.S. visas.